At 11:51 p.m., an Il-76, a four-engine military airlifter worth tens of millions of dollars, had just landed at Kresty airfield near Pskov. 30 kilometers out, three Mugen 5 class attack drones were closing at 40 meters above the ground. 130 kilometers per hour, 20 kilograms of high explosive each. They had been airborne for 50 minutes without triggering a single alarm. Two more trailed 8 minutes behind. The surveillance radar had just registered them. On the perimeter, a Tor missile crew picked up the bearing. A weak return, low and slow, flickering through ground clutter. The operator was cycling filters, trying to hold the track long enough to classify it. Behind the Tor, a Pantsir platform was powering up. A cannon crew scanned the dark from the apron edge. 4 defense layers, all active. In 9 minutes, every layer would fail. In 17, the Il-76 would be gone. Roughly an hour earlier, a clandestine cell had started launching from a clearing behind a tree line, 110 kilometers south. A handful of operators, a flatbed truck, a catapult rail staked into soft ground. 5 Mugen 5 airframes, composite fixed-wing drones with a 5-meter wingspan, 300 kilometers of range, and 20 kilograms of high-explosive incendiary in each payload bay. Total cost of the strike package? Less than $175,000. The first operator pulled the release. The catapult snapped forward, and the airframe left the rail with a flat crack that scattered birds from the tree line. The gasoline engine caught, steadied, and the drone climbed to 40 meters and turned north. 90 seconds later, the second. 90 seconds after that, the third. Wave 1. 8 minutes later, 2 more. Wave 2. No decoys. Every warhead was live. At 30 kilometers out, a surveillance radar caught the first return. Weak, intermittent, drifting in and out of ground clutter. The antenna mast stood 15 meters above the terrain, and the targets were composite airframes at 40 meters. No transponder, no emissions, threading through terrain corridors at treetop height. The return would appear for 2 sweeps, vanish for 3, reappear a degree off the last known bearing. The operator classified it as a possible low-altitude contact and passed the bearing to Kresty. The base had roughly 14 minutes. A Tor air defense system, 30 tons, 8 radar-guided missiles, 15 kilometers of engagement range, sat covering the airfield perimeter. The crew received the bearing and started hunting. On paper, 15 kilometers at 130 kilometers per hour gives 7 minutes. They did not get 7 minutes. The track kept breaking. 2 sweeps of clean return, then nothing. Reappearing a degree off the last bearing, merging with background returns. The drones were inside 12 kilometers and closing. The operator watched 3 lock attempts build in 90 seconds. Each time the firing solution climbed halfway before the return dropped into the noise and the screen reset to 0. The engagement window was compressing from 7 minutes toward 4. The operator held the lock at 8 kilometers. Solid return. He fired. The missile accelerated off the rail, acquired the target on its own seeker, and closed the gap in seconds. Alpha 1 disintegrated in a flash of fragmentation. 1 drone down. Clean intercept. The crew had done exactly what they were trained to do. But behind Alpha 1, 2 more were still inbound on slightly divergent headings, and their tracks were flickering in and out of the noise. The crew needed to reacquire, relock, and launch on each one independently, one at a time, each requiring the same sustained contact they had just spent 4 minutes building for the first. Alpha 2 was already inside 6 kilometers and closing. The window that had started at 7 minutes was now measured in seconds, and they had spent most of it killing the first drone. Alpha 2 and Alpha 3 reached the airfield. At 23:52, Alpha 2 struck a fuel service vehicle on the transport apron. 20 kilograms of incendiary detonated inside the fuel volume. Aviation kerosene ignited instantly, a fast-growing pool fire erupting across the concrete, fed by ruptured hoses and spilled fuel, sending thick black smoke rolling sideways in the night air. The fire was hot enough to soften tarmac within 30 seconds and tall enough to throw light across the entire eastern end of the apron. 3 seconds later, Alpha 3 hit adjacent ground support equipment and enlarged the fire zone. 2 impacts, 2 fires, a fuel pool spreading across the concrete, a smoke column climbing above the apron floodlights. Not the Il-76. Not yet. The fires were not the point. The smoke was. Fire crews activated within 90 seconds. The first driver swung his truck across the apron toward the burning support zone, headlights barely cutting through the smoke. A second vehicle followed, then a third. Personnel on foot dragged hose lines across the concrete, faces lit orange by the fuel fire. By 23:56, foam and water were hitting the fuel service fire, and the thick black smoke had begun spreading laterally in the light crosswind, a rolling curtain drifting east across the apron, thinning where the foam was landing, thickening wherever fresh fuel fed the base of the flame. From the control tower, the duty officer logged the attack as contained. 3 drones detected, 1 killed, 2 impacts, fires under suppression. Standard protocol already underway. The tour crew was running post-engagement diagnostics. The apron was filling with moving vehicles, personnel, and the shifting thermal mass of a fuel fire under partial suppression. No one on the ground was expecting a second wave. The Il-76 ground crew was already running. They had abandoned their servicing equipment the moment Alpha 2 hit the fuel truck. Tools dropped on the concrete, power cables left trailing, and were sprinting clear of the aircraft with the heat of the fuel fire at their backs. The Il-76 itself could not move. No tug, no engine start, no clearance to taxi, no time. 50 meters of wingspan, 4 turbofan engines, $40 to $60 million of aircraft, sitting on open concrete with its wing tanks still heavy. Tens of thousands of liters of kerosene in integral fuel cells running through the inner wing structure. 400 meters from a growing fire, surrounded by emergency vehicles, it was the largest object on the apron, and the most combustible. 7 minutes had passed since Alpha 2 hit the fuel truck. The smoke had climbed several hundred meters and was drifting east across the airfield, thinning visibility on the apron and smearing the thermal picture for anything trying to track at low altitude from the ground. Where the crosswind caught it, the column thinned to a gray haze. Where the wind dropped, it settled across the eastern taxiways in a black curtain that swallowed the floodlights. The fire crew had the Wave 1 blaze under partial containment. Foam was holding the fuel pool, but the ruptured hoses were still feeding kerosene into the concrete seams, and the smoke showed no sign of clearing. The tour had not received a new track. The base was operating under the assumption that the attack was a single wave. 3 drones, 1 killed, 2 impacts, fire under control. That's when the radar operator saw a new return on a scope he had marked clear. At 23:59, 2 more drones crossed the detection boundary from an offset bearing, roughly 30 degrees east of the axis Wave 1 had used. Bravo 1 and Bravo 2. Same speed, same altitude, same negligible radar signature. But a different approach angle, one that forced every sensor on the airfield to reorient. The Defense Coordination Cell passed the new bearing to every active system on the perimeter. 4 minutes after logging the attack as contained, the base was back at war. The tour crew was still pointed northwest, the direction they had engaged Wave 1 less than 4 minutes earlier. They began rotating to the new bearing, the radar sweeping the eastern arc. But the crew was still processing the Wave 1 aftermath, diagnostics half completed, threat assessment still logged as resolved. Classifying the new contact as hostile rather than a secondary return from the fire took seconds. Building a fresh firing solution on a bearing they had not been watching took more. The track was passed to the inner defense layer before they completed a second engagement cycle. A Pantsir point defense system, twin 30mm cannons and short-range missiles, picked up the handoff. The operator acquired Bravo 1 at 8 kilometers and fired. The missile closed fast. Fragmentation from the proximity fuse streaked past the drone, close enough to clip a control surface, close enough to knock the airframe several degrees off its programmed glide path. But the fuse had a lethal radius of 3 meters. The intercept geometry put the drone at 5, 2 meters outside the kill cone. Bravo 1 shuddered, lost clean autopilot authority, and began a shallow, uncontrolled descent. One wing dipped, the nose tracked slowly left. Its flight surfaces were damaged, its course no longer correctable, but its ballistic arc was already pointed at the transport apron, and at 130 kilometers per hour, nothing between the drone and the concrete could change that trajectory now. 40 seconds to the apron. The Pantsir operator tried to re-engage. He swung the optical tracker back toward the target and found a wall of rising smoke. The Wave 1 fires had been burning for nearly 8 minutes. Hot emergency vehicles were moving across the apron, their engines and exhaust plumes adding thermal noise to every scan. Rolling black smoke shifted with the wind, appearing and disappearing across the tracking field. He needed stable contrast to guide a missile or a gunburst, and every second the background was changing. Bravo 1 was inside 3 kilometers. The radar channel fared no better. A composite airframe the size of a large bird, flying at 30 meters above cluttered concrete, was indistinguishable from the ground returns the system's own filters were designed to reject. Bravo 1 passed through the inner defense zone without further engagement, descending toward the transport apron on a trajectory no one on the ground could correct. From below, a firefighter pulling hose across the concrete looked up through a gap in the smoke and saw it. A small gray shape, one wing low, gliding steadily downward toward the Il-76. Behind it, Bravo 2 was still closing. The last layer between the drone and the Il-76 was a ZU-23-2, a twin-barreled 23mm anti-aircraft gun, manually aimed by a 2-man crew sitting in an open mount. No radar, no guided missile, a pair of eyes, a pair of hands, and a weapon that fires 900 rounds per minute per barrel. Effective slant range against a small target? Roughly 2.5 kilometers. At 130 kilometers per hour, that gave the crew less than 70 seconds from the moment they visually acquired the drone to the moment it passed overhead. 70 seconds to spot it, track it, estimate lead, and fire. They scanned the night sky above the smoke line. The apron lights threw glare upward. The fires threw worse. Then one of them saw it, a dark shape, no lights, no sound over the noise of the burning apron, moving steadily toward the Il-76. They swung the barrels to lead, but the apron was no longer clear. Fire trucks were crossing the gun's line of fire, one moving left to right, headlights sweeping through smoke, a second pulling around the Wave 1 debris. The Il-76 itself stood directly behind the drone's inbound trajectory. Parked aircraft flanked the engagement lane on both sides. Every degree the barrels tracked, the line of fire passed through something that belonged to them. A sustained burst could shred their own equipment, their own vehicles, their own people. The 70 seconds were down to 20. The crew hesitated, fired a short burst, 3 rounds, maybe 4. The tracers arced behind the drone, low and left. The dark shape kept moving. It did not slow down. The gun fell silent. At 0:01, Bravo 1 hit the Il-76. The drone, control surfaces damaged, autopilot gone, struck the inner wing near the root. GPS interference during the terminal approach had drifted its course several meters off the intended center line, but the offset put the warhead directly into the wing root fuel zone. 20 kilograms of incendiary ruptured the integral fuel cells and ignited tens of thousands of liters of kerosene. The fire started at the wing root and spread inward along the lower wing skin within seconds, fast and hot, finding hydraulic lines, finding wiring insulation, finding every combustible material packed inside the structural bays of a heavy transport aircraft. 3 seconds later, Bravo 2 struck the forward fuselage near the engine root. The second warhead tore into hydraulic conduits, electrical harnesses, and fuel plumbing behind the No. 2 engine. 2 impacts, 2 fire zones, spreading in opposite directions along the airframe. The fire crew that had been fighting the Wave 1 blaze turned toward the Il-76 and found a wall of flame they could not approach. Fuel poured from ruptured wing lines and pooled under the fuselage. Tires burst from radiant heat. Aluminum panels softened and collapsed inward. The wing structure failed. The Il-76 burned beyond economical repair. 5 drones, each one worth $15,000 to $35,000, less than the fuel in the aircraft they destroyed. The aircraft they destroyed carried a replacement value of $40 to $60 million. It killed Alpha 1 cleanly, exactly the intercept it was built for. The Pantsir came within 2 meters of killing Bravo 1. The gun crew spotted Bravo 2 and put rounds in the air. No system failed because it was poorly made. Every system failed because the attack was designed around the gaps between them. The seconds it takes a Tor to reorient after a kill. The smoke that blinds an optical tracker after a fuel fire. The fire trucks that block a gunner's line of fire after an emergency response. Each gap is survivable on its own. The 2-wave structure hit all of them at once, in sequence, 8 minutes apart, and turned the defense's own response into the weapon that defeated it. Somewhere on a Russian airfield tonight, another transport aircraft sits on an open apron with fuel still in the wings, ground crew still on the tarmac. It looks safe because nothing has hit it yet. 5 drones in 8 minutes is all it takes.